And welcome to Radio MVP Sports Podcast. I'm Tim, along with Matt, bringing tonight's podcast. As we may have Anthony join us as he gets an opportunity, he's going to pop in. And I've also invited James Dotson, who you met, my high school basketball partner. But as everyone knows, my high school football partner is here with me, and that is Matt Emsch. And Matt, of the year with a lot of great football going on. The college football has reached its peak with the finals coming up on Monday night. We'll get into the bowl season and talking about the playoffs there. Have the NFL heading into its second season with the playoffs beginning this weekend with a wild card. So, I mean, this is just a fun time of the year when it comes to football.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we, finished up all the high school state championships not that long ago. And, now we, went through basically the end of college FBS level. We'll have the FCS championship Saturday, North Dakota State and James Madison. But we have the Big Daddy on Monday with Alabama and SEC rival Georgia. And, it's always fun to get to this point, but I always get a little sad because, that's a sign that it's winding down and we're going to have that little few-month lull without football. So thank God we have pros and it goes till February, but it's getting pretty close with that too.
Yeah, with the NFL playoffs just around the corner now, and obviously wild card weekend this week, and then you have, you get into divisional play, and it goes quick. That month of NFL football in the playoffs, it doesn't take long for it to really crescendo to the top, and next thing you know, it's the Super Bowl. But I really look forward to this time of the year. Now, talking about a little bit about the college football ranks. I don't know if you heard my prediction last week or not. It was right on schedule. I was so good at you would be proud of me. I said Clemson would blow out Alabama. Georgia would blow out Oklahoma, and then Clemson would blow out Georgia in the championship. So, as you can see, my ability to make predictions hasn't changed one bit. I did get the right call in Georgia winning, but not in a blowout, and Clemson got blown out by Alabama. So, talk about the Clemson-Alabama game. Thoughts in that one?
You know what? Real quick, throwing at you, I just wanted to mention I had let my listeners know on just football on Tuesday. Mark and I talked. I actually out of 44 bowl games, I got 33 correct. So
wow, that's pretty good.
The one I was most proud of was I picked on air the 2 weeks before. I picked UCF over Auburn in an upset, and they did win. So that was the one I was most proud of. I just had a feeling that they were going to win that one, and it was another Boise State Oklahoma type game, and it was nice to see the quote unquote little guy could win. Flipping over to the playoff. I thought, the game we saw with Oklahoma and Georgia was going to be just that. I thought that Oklahoma and Georgia would go down to the wire. They did. Georgia took it, and I had a feeling that they were going to win. But I had picked Clemson to win against Alabama. And as everybody saw, Clemson ran into an angry chip on their shoulder Alabama, and that Coach Saban had them fired up because they probably felt like nobody thought they belonged there, that Ohio State should have been there ahead of them. They did very well. They ran into a buzzsaw, and Alabama was ready. Clemson wasn't. And Coach Saban may be on his way to another national championship.
Yeah, it was a game that surprised me. I thought Clemson's offense would have a better performance than they did against Alabama's defense. I don't want to say I didn't respect Alabama's defense. I did. Nick Saban, that's the core to his team starts at defense, and then and control on the offensive side. We've seen most of that game, but I really loved the way Clemson was playing coming into the bowl game. And I really thought coming in that they had the strongest offense. I thought of the two schools. I'm talking about Alabama and Clemson. I'm not talking about all four of them. I'm just talking about that game. And I just really thought that Clemson may have been overlooked defensively. They had a chip on their shoulders too because they wanted to defend their title and to prove that they're more than just a Deshaun Watson led team, that they could do more with with a whole brand new players this year. So I was really surprised how Alabama dominated them. If anything, I think when this is all said and done, there could be really a question mark was belonged at the number one seed in these top four teams. And you could even go to what you were talking about, Matt, and, talk about a UCF, Central Florida, but defeated, in Auburn, like you said, the little guy coming up and beating the big guy, and defeated both Georgia and Alabama this year. So,
yeah.
In a lot of ways, you can make a case. I know they were 12-0, and I know they don't have the same schedule as the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC. I don't, the top five conferences, but that's a quality team this year. And you can make a very good case of how they performed in their bowl game, that they belong. And you can do the same with Ohio State, who ends up with a decisive win over USC, and in the process, has now defeated, I think, 3 teams in the top 5 and 4 teams in the top 10 this year. Resume wise, it won't shock me. And right now, if I had to take a guess, 2 or maybe 3 in the final polls. They're going to jump up from the 5th spot, guaranteed at least the 3 spot, if not into the number 2 spot, because you got to figure whoever is probably going to fall out of the top 2, and most likely would be 4 or 5. Going to be around 5 or 6 after their loss. So the other teams who were just behind them in 5 and 6 are going to have a chance to move up. So I wouldn't shock me if Ohio State at the end of the day finishes 2. I expect them to finish at least 3, in the final poll. But I know it doesn't mean anything. It's a runner-up thing. A case, and I think it's a strong case, that the committee got it completely wrong this year.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up the not only the UCF but the Ohio State argument. Real quick on Central Florida, I am one of the loudest voices out there about, I truly believe, and we will see at least in a 10 playoff system team. I think you do get those aberrations of such a team that is so well coached, like UCF this year, that in a playoff system, you get those teams that normally you just don't think would ever win to win a championship. You get teams, that have struggled to get in, into the playoffs as wild cards in the pros, like Steelers or the Seahawks or the Giants, and they've rattled off a Super Bowl win. So it is possible. UCF may have that type of team. You see in high school even, you get teams that physically are just not what other teams are, but they are so well coached. They are so well balanced in their play, and they are on everything, on point, all 3 phases, that they just play a better game instead of versus just, which team has physically better players. So I believe that, we'll never know. I think they could have done well this year. The Ohio State argument, you look at what happened. Everyone, I truly believe, could not let last year go. What happened to Ohio State and Clemson, they just said, it'll probably happen again. You look at Ohio State, yes, what happened with Iowa that's what did them in. It was a shocker. They kept talking about it the night of the USC game, how dominating they were. It made no sense. It was just an aberration. It was just one of those things. If that wouldn't have happened, or even if it was close, it would have been a different story. You look at how Ohio State has just finished out with the Big Ten Conference win, how they just destroyed Wisconsin. Then what Wisconsin did in their bowl game against Miami.
Yeah.
And Ohio State will, in my opinion, be in the top 4. I definitely think that they were a better team than Clemson. I think they would have beat Clemson if they would have got into the playoff. So I do believe they'll be in the top 4. I think Clemson does not belong in the top 4 after the season. You as well that whoever loses the championship Monday will drop. They'll maybe be a 3 or 4. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I as well as you, Tim, I was very surprised at how inefficient Clemson's defense specifically was. They just had no answer. And, they supposedly had the best defense in the country. Their players are off the chart ridiculous. But, any given night was ready and Clemson wasn't. And they really made Clemson look bad that evening. And the only thing now with Alabama that I question it's going to be a closer game is because of the injuries that they sustained that night against Clemson. They had some serious injuries at key positions, and they've already been dinged up. Georgia is I'm very happy actually to see. I've always liked Georgia. I feel like they've been the bridesmaid, never the bride for so long. They've always been just there. And, they have just been winning all these games they're not supposed to. They got beat by Auburn. They came back and redeemed themselves and ridiculously whooped Auburn the second time around. They just have that balanced attack offensively, defensively. They have good special teams. The quarterback, everybody's been slamming him saying he's a freshman. Well, guess what? This freshman has not messed up ever since he came in against Notre Dame. His first game, week 1, he only had 1 loss against Auburn, and he's done a great job. So he's not shook by the limelight right now. He has a great core of guys around him taking good care of him, and he's efficiently leading that offense. So Georgia is a very dangerous team right now, and I think that they have an excellent chance of winning that game on Monday.
And I agree a lot what you're saying there. And I think one of the things that needs to be pointed out is about, Fromm and how he quarterbacked that team is there was no panic on him when he was trailing 17 points, at one point in that ball game. They just went back to work and did what they needed to do to give that opportunity, to get back in that ball game with Oklahoma. And I thought Fromm played a really terrific game. And you could see as the season progressed, I didn't see Georgia that often, but as the season progressed, you could see, as you mentioned, how he has grown. And I guess you could use the old cliche, Matt, that, he's not a freshman no more. You know what I'm saying? He's got enough snaps underneath his belt. He has enough wins. He's done the job that has been asked of him beyond being a freshman. You can see that, Kirby Smart and them has done a great job bringing him along. And, you can see the leadership skills that he possesses. And I think that is, really what you want out of a quarterback, one who makes good decisions, one who can lead a team and, obviously grow as the season progresses. And I think he has proven that, throughout the season of what he has done. Getting into this Monday night matchup real quick, I'm kind of interested on a big level here, on a nationwide level of the interest in this game. Obviously, in the South, it's going to be huge, especially this, in Georgia and in Alabama and Florida and the Southeast. I think obviously there's going to be huge, viewership there. My question is
Georgia.
Yeah, and my question is the Northwest is the Midwest, is the South, Northeast? Are they going to be willing? Obviously football fans will watch, but are you really going to care about two teams from the South?
Not as much.
Yeah, obviously, best case scenario is where you have different regions playing each other, like east, west, or north, south scenario. You don't necessarily have that this year. Have a de facto SEC championship game number 2 because Alabama didn't qualify to play in the championship game. Right. And Auburn did, and Auburn ended up losing 2. So this is kind of like a do-over for their own championship, but now is a championship for the nation.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. I had actually had this conversation with another friend of mine, and we discussed the same thing. You have that, core of college football fans that it's the national championship. You're just not going to miss it, like you and I. But, as a whole, I would like to see like the Nielsen ratings on comparing it to, say, the year that, Ohio State and Oregon played versus last year or this year, because you have, teams like that. So, yeah, I think it's going to affect it. You are pulling, stadium-wise, you're going to be ridiculously filled with – you're in the state of Georgia, not far from Bama.
Right.
But, yeah, I think up north and northeast, northwest, it's just not going to be watched as much. It was an exciting game, that Oklahoma game. They had their chances to win it. I just wanted to mention I at the end of that game, and if Georgia, they've been doing, because Oklahoma had them. I don't know if you remember that last drive that basically did in Oklahoma. They had the one punt. It went 29 yards. They were up 7. Georgia got it back. And then they were driving. I think it was 3rd or 4th and long. And the defensive lineman for Oklahoma had him for a sack, and he missed him. That lost the game for them. And Georgia just seems to be, doing those types of plays where it's like most people say it's luck. But when you have guys doing the right things, doing their assignments, being in the right place at the right time, and they didn't give up. And the point I'm getting to is, everyone's saying, Alabama, Kirby Smart is an ex-assistant. Right now, I think it's whenever Saban plays teams that his ex-assistants or head coaches, I think he's 7-0 or something like that. This might be a different story because these kids are just really hungry and nobody's telling them they can do it. It's them against the world. And, I just feel like things are setting up for Georgia. Will I be surprised if Alabama wins? Absolutely not, especially the way they played against Clemson the other night. But yeah, make a long story short, back to what you originally said. Yeah, I think it's going to affect ratings, and I don't think that it will be as big as it normally is.
Yeah, I have a gut feeling if you live in, California, you're not going to have it. If you live in Ohio, it's a football area, so I think you will, but not maybe at the highest level that you would have if Ohio State obviously was playing, or in a scenario that maybe even if Ohio State lost in the semis, that they would still want to see who won the championship or had someone to root against. Obviously, if you one of those fans that like to root against a team, I guess you're rooting against Alabama because they're always there. And Georgia's the underdog, even though they won the SEC championship. It's kind of an odd scenario to have two schools from the same conference playing. I think that's
it's
honest to God. I just think it's a bad play.
Yeah, it's like when Bama and LSU played the national championship that one year. I just think it takes a lot away from it. I agree with you, Tim, and that's what we got, and that's what we're gonna, have to deal with. So, yeah, you look at though what Nick Saban and Alabama are basically doing, and if they win, they will have won 5 of the last 9 national championships. That is absolutely ridiculous. And they've been to how many? So I would love to know, right? I can't think of off my head since he got there, but I mean, he has won. I personally, I don't know what your opinion is on Nick Saban. For me, I cannot think of a better coach in the history of the sport than him because of how difficult it is to win now in this day and age with the setup they have. I really think he may be the best of all time right now. I really do. And his mentor, Bill Belichick, and you look at him, he's probably the best in the history of the NFL, and if not the one of for sure. And man, it's just what he's doing is unprecedented. I know, Bear Bryant and all these other great, characters in history, but if we're just looking flat out what someone has programming, the big type of wins they're having and year in and year out. I can't think of any other coach in history that's done what he's doing right now, as difficult as it is set up right now to do it.
I can't disagree with that. I'm trying to. I really am, because I'm going through my mind and I'm thinking about some of the great coaches of the past, and there has been some fantastic runs by different schools. As you mentioned, Bear Bryant, Woody Hayes at Ohio State.
Just gonna say,
you can go with Jimmy Johnson at Miami, and there's so many that had
Tom Osborne at Nebraska.
Yeah, Joe Paterno. There's so many that we could talk about and what they've done. Right about how the game has changed and the focus on trying to get these great athletes to buy into a system and to perform at the highest level each Saturday afternoon or night. And he has done that. I mean, you can't take that away from what he's achieved. And quite honest with you got to give him a, kind of a feather in his cap, in the sense that he's done it at multiple schools. I mean, he did this at LSU before, returning to the college ranks after his stint in the NFL. And that's the same thing you could say with Myers, maybe at Ohio State, because he did it, at Florida, and he took two programs prior to Florida, and raised their levels to, to levels that those schools never seen before, when he was at Utah and also at Bowling Green. Mm-hmm. And then you can say what he's done at Ohio State. What is he's lost? Like 4 or 5 games
it's obscene. And he's the only coach around right now that has a winning percentage against Nick Saban.
Right. You're talking, those two coaches, in my opinion, are obviously, heads and shoulders above everybody else. You can make a case for Myers very well. Definitely being, on equal par because of what he's achieved at Ohio State and what he achieved at Florida. And you can say, and I don't want to take anything from Nick Saban, because if people remember Nick Saban's career, joined Bill Belichick in Cleveland as defensive coordinator, and they made that small run to the playoffs with, Saban. He was actually the head coach at the University of Toledo, and they went undefeated that year.
And he was at Michigan,
when they won.
Wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, he left the Browns. When the Browns moved to Baltimore and everyone was let go, he did take over Michigan State. He did have success, but he never got past Jim Tressel then, in that era. And he actually then moved down to LSU and then ended up winning there and then jumping over to Miami, if I remember correctly. Well, his career, but he's had you just can't take it away from either one of them. They've both been so successful at the collegiate level, at the highest level. And I think Saban gets the nod just a little bit higher than Myers for what he's achieved on a consistent basis. But what Myers did at Florida and what he's done at Ohio State, it's impressive. I don't think you can, I think that's his only rival in a sense at the collegiate level as a coach is what Myers has done.
Right.
I don't think there is another one.
I agree. And it's awesome that he's at Ohio State too.
Well, it is. It is. Trust me. I mean, I think we all knew, I think we all had concerns, especially you and myself being, Youngstown guys. And of course you played winning national titles there, and then seeing him take the Ohio State job and raising it to that level of championships year after year after year, playing in 3 national title games at Ohio State. Obviously, Jim's career went in a different route, when he left. But, I mean, I think he gets undervalued on a national level what he achieved. Let me put it that way.
Oh, all he did was win. I mean, he won game after game after game. And if that incident did not happen with Terrell Pryor, I believe he'd still be at Ohio State. He'd still be winning Big Ten championships, still winning national championships. I think he already is cemented as one of the best in history. And I think if that didn't happen, he'd still be just knocking them out and rocking it. So it's a real shame that happened with him. And it's heartbreaking, but he's loving life right now. And, people will not leave him alone with the, coaching discussion. Recently people have been asking him if he would coach the Browns. And I just, I laugh because I think he's done. I think he's enjoying life being, a cushy president, and he's basically the mayor of this city in Youngstown. And, he could run for governor if he wants. So, I think he's had his fill. I'm sure it left a sour taste in his mouth the way he was treated. I think he was made, there was the NCAA, made a statement using him as a guinea pig, because the same season Butch Davis, who was the head coach at North Carolina that year, had one of the worst of collegiate cheating scandals in history, let go, but the very next year was coaching football at another school. So that was just, they made a mockery of their system, and, they wanted to just use Coach Tressel as, the donkey on the wall. And what a shame it happened. And he got pushed out of the sport. But, if anybody was to be the right person to take over Ohio State, it was Meyer. And thank God he decided to come out. I think he was waiting for that spot to open up. And I don't know if he'd be coaching anywhere right now if Coach Tressel was there. And, we're really lucky that if Tress had to leave, that's the guy who was waiting in the wings.
I think it was just kind of that perfect scenario. As you mentioned, I don't think you're going to find 2 coaches back to back for one school that had the importance of national titles and competing at the highest level than you did with Tressel, followed by Myers. I just don't think it's possible. Whoever replaces Nick Saban someday is going to have so much on his shoulder. I don't care if it's one of his former assistants. Let's just say hypothetically that Kirby Smart, 5 years from now takes over the job at Alabama. It's still, not the same.
No.
And I'm not saying he can't do it, because obviously what he's done the last 2 years at Georgia is proof that he was waiting for that opportunity to show his skills as a head coach, and how he's he didn't take over a barren program either. Georgia was in pretty good shape with Mark Richt.
Mark Richt was doing a great job, and everybody that was ripping him,
he just couldn't beat Alabama. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of what's going on in Michigan that can't beat Ohio State right now.
Harbaugh.
Yeah, and then before that, I mean, all the coaches that came by,
no, they are really in a rut, boy, right now. They can't beat the Buckeyes, and I'm loving it.
No, I'm each and every year. It's the best music in my ears, is watching them go down to defeat.
Me too, Tim. I'm a big Mark Richt fan. I think he's a fabulous coach. I always liked him. Found this out, but my wife and I found out that him and his wife adopted, and we adopted, and we felt kind of like a kinship through that. They had gone through some similar things like we had, and the guy never had a losing record there. I think like his worst record was maybe 9-3, kind of like what Pelini was in Nebraska. Right. And it wasn't good enough. And, there were some years that they were just on the cusp of winning that SEC championship. And especially the one year Alabama won, they met in the championship, and Georgia had the game won and they let it go at the very end. But he went to Miami, and look what he's done there. He's brought the U back. So he's proven that he is a good coach, and you're right. He did not leave the cupboard bare, and Kirby Smart walked into a program that was being taken care of. And, when you get up to that level, like, you have Alabama and you have Ohio State, you have the means of, you have basically only a few schools that are at that level of such eliteness. Anything they need, the facilities they have are second to none. And that's why, I think Ohio State is in the position they are, and they got Meyer. And it was because of, they can get anything they need to make that program better. And that's Alabama. And Bama wasn't like that. They kind of slouched for a while, and he took over, and there they are. But I think, Tom Herman is going to turn Texas into a power again, and they'll give him every tool he needs down there. USC is one of those that can be that again, but I think they need to find the right guy. I'm not sure the one that's there is right. But Georgia is definitely headed in the right direction. Tim, before I forget this, I just wanted to ask you, you have, I forget who it was. I don't think it was it Saquon who broke the record. I think he broke Ron Dayne's record. I have an issue with that, and I don't know if you feel the same. My issue with that is they now count postseason yards. When Ron Dayne played, his record that got broke, the yards that he played in bowl games postseason were not that back then allowed to be counted as part of it. I think that should be looked at, and they should be allowed to have it, because if the kids today get to use those yards as part of their career, I think these guys from the past should also be allowed to add those their career.
I agree with you. If he has games that he played and those yardage are not part of his collegiate total, I totally agree. You have to change it and add it back to his total. I don't know what the rules are, to be honest. If it was back in the day, they did not, 20 years ago, they did not count the postseason yardage. I'm not sure.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
This was my question of the week on my show on Tuesday. I had one that, was more or less a question of if you know what I'm thinking instead of fact-based. And my question to everybody was, looking at the Heisman Trophy the last 15 years, and I broke it down. I didn't say just of all time. Last 15 years, can you think of, in my opinion, Matt Emsch's opinion, the player who was screwed out of the Heisman the worst? Can you think of that player? And it might be
it's Manning.
Peyton
Manning, in my opinion, yeah.
Well, mine was McCaffrey from Stanford, because you had this young man who not just broke records of conference. He broke every FBS at any level, collegiate football record. He broke them all of total yards and I think it was maybe touchdowns of all time. And he lost to, I think it was Henry, the running back from Alabama, and all he had done, SEC record. So I don't know how that was done. I don't know. I think it was a sham. I think it was heresy. It's supposed to go to the best player in college football. You had somebody who broke record of all time, and the kid was jonesed out of a Heisman. And look what he's doing in the NFL right now.
Oh, yeah. So there's no question his talent level. I agree 100% about that. His talent level was off the charts, and I remember watching him in the different bowl games and in the Pac-10 games and what he achieved. There's no question. I think McCaffrey, as an overrun best player, no question about it. And I think he would definitely be on that list. I mean, there's been so many close battles for the Heisman over the years. And I would say in the last 20, 25 years, it's become a quarterback-dominated award.
Like the NFL MVP.
And, I'm not saying, obviously, everyone knows the quarterback's the most important position because there's only one, and he controls the offense, and he has so much responsibilities. I'm not denying the skill it takes to play that position. However, like Saquon Barkley and what he achieved this year, as a running back, or, you don't see – I don't know if you'll ever see a Tim Brown win another, a tight end, split end type win the Heisman ever again.
Or Charles Woodson.
Right. A defensive back who beat out Manning that year.
You know what lost it for Manning, though, Tim, not to interrupt you? I truly believe what lost the Heisman for Peyton Manning was that he could not beat Florida. And he just couldn't beat them. And if he would have beat Florida, they would have won the national championship. So, it's ironic you're bringing this stuff up because Mark and I were talking about this exact subject, and I brought up about the NFL MVP, how it's just become a quarterback award. And, you have guys in the past, you've had a kicker win that award. And, the one year that Aaron Rodgers won it a few years ago, J.J. Watt had that unbelievably obscene year. Right. I truly believe he was the MVP. He should have been the MVP of the whole league, not defensively. And I think he got ripped off that year as well.
Yeah. So you bring up excellent points there, Matt. And I can't disagree with those. Obviously, I think today has become such an offensive ball game. All the rules are designed for teams to score more points, at all levels of football. You've seen it at the high school level where it is probably the more purest game because at least, they don't take away the chance for a defense to make plays. As you go up the ladder or, in football, at the collegiate level and then at the NFL, it becomes harder and harder to play defense because they've just taken so many opportunities to either make a play or how a judgment call comes into effect. I mean, today, I always laugh. I always say, you can't, if you're a cornerback, you can't breathe on a wide receiver without the flag coming out. So you can't defend it. If he has a half a step on you, you're screwed because you cannot do anything physical to prevent that catch. And if you do, it's going to be, a penalty. And, I remember when defenses had an opportunity to make plays, and I understand everyone loves scoring. And a game, people celebrate the Georgia game, with Oklahoma because it was 48-45. It was a high-scoring game. And I'm not saying it's not good football. I'm just saying it's a different brand of football. A 31-28 ball game could be just as exciting, where you have some offense moving the ball and defense still making plays. A 17-21 game, maybe not, that could be a kind of a little boring, maybe too much of a punt game. But I think we lose track about what is a great game today, because a great game does to me is not meaning we see 90 points in a ball game. A great game to me is where both sides are challenged to score, meaning you had to go up against a great defense and you put up 4 touchdowns. You did a great job. You achieved. And if a defense, goes, oh, we had a bad day. We gave up 4 touchdowns because we normally only give up, less than 3, per ball game. Well, you went up against a great offense and had a great day. And a defense, shuts down an offense completely, kind of like what Alabama did. Because I really thought, Clemson was really strong at the end of the season offensively. And, that you got to salute the defense once in a while. This is still 2 sides of the ball. It's
right.
Points does not necessarily make it a great game. It makes it a great offensive game. It doesn't make it a great football game. And I think we celebrate high scores versus a great football game.
Yeah.
It's different. I mean, I know there was a small comeback. There's 17 points that Georgia was down and they came back. And Georgia's defense did play better in the second half. And they did play great in the overtimes. So you got to give them credit where they for coming up when they had to. But you still gave up, 45 points in that ball game as a defense. I mean, that got to sting.
Yeah, it does. And, it also shows how good Oklahoma's offense was. I knew they were going to put up points. The way they were clipping themselves at the end of the year, I mean, they were smoking. And the way that game started out, I'm sure you felt the same way. When it got to be 1 point, I think they were ahead by 3 scores at one point, something like that. I looked at my wife and I said, wow, I thought this was going to be a showing, but I didn't think they were going to do this to Georgia. And I thought it was going to get ugly. I thought that game might end up like 42-45 to 17 at one point. But, Georgia gave them credit. And what I love to see, like you're referring to, is not just offensively, defensively, they went in at halftime and they made adjustments. I love being a football guy, seeing a team make adjustments. If my Steelers could have done what they did in the AFC Championship game last year, we might have got number 7 Super Bowl. So it's refreshing to see coaching staffs make adjustments, teams come out and completely play a different second half. And that's what happened with Georgia. And I don't know. We all know what Alabama is capable of. And they reminded everybody this past week. And, but Georgia just seems like they're a team of destiny right now, and they're hungry and they want it. And, Luck is a fickle beast, but she seems to be kind of leaning towards the Bulldogs. And, some people say Luck is just, it's an outcome of being prepared and having, the right kind of balance in your offense, defense, special teams. So, it might not be just luck. It might just be that they're just playing well and they know how to do it. And when it comes down to the wire, they can win a ball game, and they're doing well. So I'm excited to see that game on Monday and how it turns out.
Well, I originally picked Clemson to win the whole thing. So obviously I got that one wrong. I'm going to, put the jinx on Georgia, and I think the Bulldogs will come away with the win against. Look, and this is not a slight against Alabama. I know how talented they are. I'm going for Georgia because kind of like what we talked about before. I kind of want to see a new team win the title this year. I mean, it was kind of the same last year when Clemson won, and that was one of the reasons I was rooting for them this year. Is Ohio State wasn't there, so I didn't have a school that I'm going to root for. I love the idea of seeing maybe a little dominance once in a while and seeing a team repeat. Right. And so, I was kind of rooting for that scenario for Clemson. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So, I think Georgia hasn't won a national title since
85.
Yeah, I was going to say Herschel Walker. So
Right.
You know, we're talking a long time ago, and you know, talking about a beast of a Heisman Trophy winner back in the day. One of the all-time greats.
Yeah. Oh my God. He. If they didn't have him, they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah,
you look at right now, Georgia with their two-headed running attack with Chubb and I forget the other kid's name, number one.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember names.
They're both studs, and it's like, you know, thunder and lightning, and they're just. My gut tells me Alabama, but like you, I want Georgia to win. I want them to do it. You know, they've been in the last three, so they were in it they're in it this year. They were in it last year. They won it the year before. Ohio State did it the year before that. So yeah, I mean, they're always there. So I would love it if Georgia does it. I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna pick Georgia. Normally, I never go against my gut. The reason I'm saying my gut is because of how they played against Clemson.
I understand completely.
I'm still going. I'm going to still go with Georgia because I just feel like they're that team of destiny right now.
Yeah. You know, as we turn the page here, looking a little at the NFL wildcard weekend, since we, you know, talked a little bit about the NFL, I got to get your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills crashing the party and getting in with the Cincinnati Bengals coming to their rescue with the big win on, you know, in week 17. But I mean, of all the teams, I mean, there's a lot of new teams this year in the NFL playoffs, but you know, the Bills, the Jaguars, the Rams, I mean, that's right there. Something to really talk about, you know, and the Titans. I mean, we got some interesting teams in this first round of the playoffs, you know, the wild card weekend. We got some, you know, teams that haven't been there for a while, or it's been a long time since they've been in the playoffs. I mean, I don't remember the last time the Rams were in the playoffs, and something like the Bills, I think this is the first time in 18 years.
It was back when Jeff Wilkins was there.
So you're talking the year before 99, 2000.
And then the year before that, well, they were in it 2 years in a row. They lost to the Patriots the one year, the second year. Correct. The year before that, they beat the Titans, and that's the last time the Titans was deep. So it's just like, you know, refreshing to have Georgia in the national championship. As you just alluded to, I love the fact all these teams that haven't been there in a long time are in it. I like the Titans are in it. I think that two teams, well, the Bills surprise me, of course. Two teams that I say that three that you have to take seriously as being able to go to the Super Bowl is, number one, the Jaguars. They scare me. They beat my Steelers, and it's the beginning of the year. Their defense is ridiculous. They have a good running game, and they have a good quarterback. And, you know, he was good when he was another UCF player. So when he was at UCF, I forget his last name. He was the quarterback there. They were excellent when he was there. Went to a big bowl game.
Right?
No. I forget what his name is, but when he was a senior at UCF, they went to a big bowl game. I think they were undefeated that year as well, and they got beat up pretty bad in the bowl game. Or wait, no, I think they might have won. I can't remember. So Jaguars are really good. I think they're dangerous. I'm glad Baltimore's out. As being a Steeler, I don't like playing the Ravens in the playoffs because that one can go either way. You have a rivalry there. The Bills did surprise me. I don't think they're going to go far. I really don't. But McCoy is having a great year. The other two teams I think are going to be, you know, have a great chance of going. The Vikings, they've got a really good team right now. And you just mentioned them a second ago, the Rams. They are really good. They're playing good football. They're solid. I think they themselves in the NFC have an excellent chance to go to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, I think Todd Gurley and the effects that he's had the last 3 weeks of the season and the monster numbers that he's put up really takes a lot of pressure off of Goff. And then you add their wide receiving core to the mix. So when they can do the play action and they can go downfield, you know, they have Woods, they have Watkins, you know, they have quite a nice core receivers to throw to, and Goff is really I think shown why he was the number one pick a couple years back, you know, and why he has achieved what he has this year, you know, under the Rams they have achieved. So I agree with you. The Rams as a team, maybe from this wild card round to watch. The Jaguars, how can you not love what Jacksonville has been this year? Blake Bortles is the question mark there. I mean, yes, he's played better this year, and he's played a lot better than most people give him credit for. You just know that deep down, you know, he's never been before. And, you know, will he force a few passes that he normally doesn't try to make in a playoff scenario, which happens? And we'll see. But their defense definitely could take them all the way to the Super Bowl. They're that good. They're that devastating, you know, over to take over a ball game, you know, and you know, that kind of makes you wonder if they could do it. Probably not, but I like Kansas City. You know, I know it's a long run for them, but you know, I love Reed as a coach. I think, you know, you give him opportunities to get ready for a ball game. His team is really prepared. Obviously, you know, Alex Smith will be a question mark there, but they got, you know, Hunt at running back. You know, the defense has played, you know, exceptionally well most of the season long. They have Tyreek Hill who can get the ball to him in the open field, so he can take it to the house on any time he has the ball in his hands. So, you know, maybe as a my deep throw, you know, or my big wild card play for the Super Bowl would be the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they didn't finish as strong as everyone hoped, but now that they've had, you know, an opportunity to get here, it wouldn't shock me if they take full advantage of it.
They also like Georgia and college, the Chiefs have, you know, always seemed to be the bridesmaid, never the bride, and they have turned it on when they've needed it most. They started out ridiculously strong, and then they met up with their nemesis, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they just can't beat us, you know, knock on wood. And Pittsburgh's the only team that has a winning record in Arrowhead. We've never lost there. So right. We play well against the Chiefs, but they have turned it back on at the right time. And, yeah, they're very dangerous. Like I said, the Jaguars, the team that was ridiculously hot was the Eagles. But when they lost Carson Wentz, which was such a shame, just like Antonio Brown was on the verge of maybe being that different player other than a quarterback of winning the MVP. He'll be back. But then you also have Deshaun Watson, who was having an amazing year at quarterback. These guys got hurt. Carson Wentz, when he went down, the Eagles they're too up and down for me. I think that they're going to get knocked out. I really do. I think the Vikings and the Rams are two of the teams that might be playing in the NFC Championship. I don't think the Panthers are going to do it. You know, and then you always have, of course, you have the issue of the Patriots, who, you know, just like Alabama, they're always there. So, you know, I had said this when we played them, being the Steelers in the regular season. It was a huge game. I said, you know what? I would rather we lose to them in the regular season and beat them, obviously, in the playoffs. So if we are to meet up with them again in a repeat of last year, I hope that's the case. I think if Antonio Brown wouldn't have hurt his calf, I really believe we would have won that game, because they didn't have an answer for our three-headed attack offensively. the possibility of the Patriots getting beat in the postseason before the AFC Championship, I think it's stronger this year than it has been before because of teams like the Jaguars and the Chiefs, the way they're playing. So I hope that, one of those teams can knock them off. And if Pittsburgh wins, their next playoff game, that, we don't have to deal with them again because, nobody wants to play the Patriots in a championship game. So it'll be interesting to see how this weekend goes. But yeah, back to what you said, brother. I like seeing these teams that have not been in it for a while. It's refreshing.
It's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to this weekend of football because obviously, the wild card in the NFL is always interesting rounds. You get the 4 games. It's 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and then we got the championship game in college football on Monday. It's action packed on that level, and that's to me, what January is all about. And playing for championships or trying to get to a championship. And, obviously, like as you mentioned, you never discount the Patriots for what they have achieved. They do have Bill Belichick on the sideline, and anytime, just like Nick Saban, you have him, that his team's going to be prepared and ready to play. And I'm not taking anything away from Mike Tomlin and what the Steelers achieved this year or any other team in the NFL. But, there's a reason why you have the reputations because you've done it. And championships on the field, and they've lost them on the field. And, in the end, you got to, tip their cap. They're still defending NFL champions until someone beats them. So,
right.
That's going to be the most important thing. See who's going to knock them off. If it's going to happen next weekend or in the AFC Championship, well, I just have to wait and find out how it all plays out. And, the wild card weekend, though, is turning out to be one of the more fun times of the year because, you have 2 teams waiting to find out who they're going to play, usually in each conference. And, you just don't know what type of upsets will happen. I mean, the Titans, Chiefs, Falcons, Rams, obviously, on Saturday, and then Bills, Jaguars, and, and the Panthers, Saints. I think that might be, Sunday afternoon. I think, 4:00. I think that might be a great game. Down in
great.
Right. And I'll tell you, there's so many good teams this year that you get on the right run. You look at what the Saints do offensively. That attack, at running back. It's just, and in what, they have achieved this year, Drew Brees did not necessarily have his best season ever. Matter of fact, you could say a subpar season for him. But, his team is right there with an opportunity to make a run. A team that can run the ball in the playoffs, I don't care if you're indoors or you're outdoors, that's a huge advantage, as you know. It's about being able to control the clock, get first downs, and move, into territory and scoring when opportunity arises. And they have an offense that I think teams are going to have to really pay attention to because roster that may be the best combination ever at running back, in one season. I don't know if you can statistically, I bet you there hasn't been a better 2 ever. I mean, there's been some great duos over the years, going back into Steelers history, of course, you had, Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier, and there's been others, but what they've done in New Orleans this year, it's phenomenal. They, without question, they got to be one of the top duos ever in the NFL history and what they have achieved this year.
And they are one of those teams that I've had people I've talked to this past week about the games this weekend saying, oh, I didn't know the Saints were in it. That's the way they want it. They're under everybody's radar. People are forgetting about them. And I think they're going to sneak up and cause some damage. So I agree, Tim. They could end up making a run and going back to the Super Bowl and maybe even winning it because they have a prolific offense. And their defense is actually playing really well right now too. So, I mean, when you got a player like Drew Brees, he's a proven champion. He knows how to win games. He's still in great shape, and he's slinging it as good as ever. And he's younger than Tom Brady. No, he hasn't won as much as Brady has, but he does have a Super Bowl under his belt. He won one, and he's won a lot of games. And you have a guy that is in great shape and that has been in the league for a while and has won a championship, then you're in good hands. So,
What I was going to say is what Kamara has brought to that team has just really changed them. They're just the dynamic that he brings to their offense, and then he just, it's really made a huge, difference, for them this year. It's just the bottom line. I think run the ball the way they want, and they can use them both as receivers. It's just huge. I just honestly believe that if there's a team coming out of this wild card, in the NFC scenario that has an excellent shot to get there, it's New Orleans. I agree with you that the two waiting for them in the divisional rounds, and I want to take anything away from either the Eagles or for Minnesota and what they have achieved this year. And obviously the Eagles, as you mentioned, down the quarterback, and now have Foley as their quarterback. It's just maybe not the same level of play, but they're still a great team. So I just think the competition coming out of the NFC is going to be huge this year. And a question mark it will be is, I just think overall, you look at the AFC, take nothing away. I mean, you got the Patriots and the Steelers, waiting for their opponents. So, I mean, I think those four teams are legitimate NFL Super Bowl champion caliber teams. And then you look at this round here, the wild card. If there's a wild card team, and it has happened before, as you mentioned, New Orleans is sitting there with all that talent and what they have done on defense. And, Sean Payton, he has won a Super Bowl. He's gotten there. He's been part of many successful teams in his lifetime as a coach. So, our coach was coming out of the wild card round, who just may win it all.
I agree. Yep, and I love that commercial they have on TV right now about wild cards, because it's the truth. And like I said, I picked three specific ones out. My Steelers, we stumbled into the playoffs that one year and we won. My buddies Frankie, and who lives in New York, his Giants did it, and the Seahawks did it too. So it definitely can be done, and those teams are dangerous.
No question about it. Matt, thank you, my friend, for tonight. I appreciate you stepping in. Unfortunately, Anthony was unable to join us, and James was unable to join us. I want to get you and James together one of these days, where I can say, not only do I have my partner from football, I got my partner from basketball with me. And plus you two would get along great. He's a Steelers fan. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, nice. Well, before we get off, I got to have your pick for the FCS national champion. We have North Dakota State and JMU.
I'm going to go with North Dakota State. I think, they're so good.
Yeah,
they just do it every year. It's just tough.
Mark and I talked about it on my show Tuesday, and James Madison, they're stacked right now. They're at a high level. They're repeating, second year in a row they've been in the championship. Of course, they beat YSU last year, but they lost a lot of guys. They could be just as good. I don't think they are. I think North Dakota State's going to win as well. I won't be surprised if James Madison repeats. But North Dakota State has proven that, with the championships that they've won, that they're the elite of all time of FCS, 1AA. One of the best programs, if not the best. I mean, they've got like a 6 or 7-0 record versus FBS teams. So, they're from our conference, YSU's conference.
When they moved up from Division II to Division I AA or FCS, whatever you want to call it nowadays, they have really proven their merit. throughout the years. And there's no question that they deserve the praise that they get. And I don't want to take anything away from James Madison because they're defending champion, as you mentioned. And, to get back, as you know, as a player, is a difficult thing to do. And you should never underestimate a champion because a champion knows what it takes to win. And, both these schools have been there. And it should be a lot of fun on Saturday night for those two games. So, that's another one. And I didn't mean to overlook it, but you're right. That should be a good one. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm gonna go in conference play because I'm a conference type guy. I always kind of root for the conferences, the Big Ten.
Well, you
and what the Big Ten
too, Tim.
A lot to talk about.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Also, you look at their program. I forget his name, but their ex-head coach who had won at least 4 national championships is now the head coach at Wyoming, who had maybe their best record in school history this year and won big in their bowl game. So, man, they're putting it together. And, I kind of am the mind of, I think that they have maybe reached the pinnacle of that level. Now, granted, they could be like a Mount Union at the FCS level and just stay there and keep winning. But I think they've proven with how they keep winning championships and with the amount of wins they have versus FBS teams that they should actually make the move up.
I wonder if physically they can do it, not necessarily the players wise, but I'm talking about getting the attendance numbers where they need to be. To have the facilities to play, MAC schools or better, to make that jump to, let's say, the All-American Conference. Let's just use that because that's a spread out conference, from east to west and north to south. You got to have certain abilities to do that. And I'm not sure they're going to have the facilities to do that. Just because of their location and their geographics and that, they may have maxed out where they're at, kind of like Youngstown State. There's no question in my mind, 15, 16 years ago, if the opportunity came from the MAC for YSU to join, they could have competed and grew with that conference. But today, because they don't have the budget to play at that level.
Right.
And that is such a different game because of the money structure today. Obviously, the Sun Belt all moved up together, joined something like that. Like when Appalachian State and all those that moved up to Division I, they did it as an entire conference, which is very unique. But that's what happened, there. So it's an interesting question. I think sometimes schools reach a certain level because of the market they're in that they're not going to be able to get to that next size unless they have a huge donor, in place where you have a small school that can play, at that level. You really need to have that type of funding. And I just don't know. I'm not saying they can't do it. I just don't know if they have that ability. And that goes beyond football. But as a football team,
they're ready.
Competition-wise, they're ready. I agree with you. Just like YSU was ready 15 years ago when Tressel was here. It was just, at the end of your career, they talked about, joining the MAC, and it just never happened. And obviously, I think, it's just a matter of those things happening. I do want to pass on a sad note for me. A friend of mine who has helped me throughout my career, Rick Foley, passed away this past week. Those who know me over the airways knew that Rick helped me. He was an engineer one time, but prior to that, he did a lot of freelancing, and he helped me out when I needed an engineer back at the station when I was doing my football games for the first year, and I had 2 games going on in 2 different places. He was back at the station, making sure everything was organized and did well. I met Rick when he was doing a computer radio show, talking about computers and the internet 5 years ago. So prayers go out to Tina and Lita. And I know, I know what everyone says, you're in a better place, but I know those who are going to miss them wish he could still be here today. And without question, Rick was a big part of my life in broadcasting because he actually helped me get 2 different jobs at different times in radio, and because he recommended me. So I was very fortunate to have that friendship, and I want to send out my condolences and dedicate this show to Rick and his memory, and let him know that I'll always remember him in the fondest of lights, and call him my friend. And it's a friendship that lasted a very long time. I will remember fondly as my years continue here on this earth.
And my condolences as well. I didn't know him, but if he was a friend of yours, I know he was a good guy. So my prayers out to his family and yourself.
Matt, I thank you again for your time, and always we'll hope to talk to you next week as the NFL continues, and we'll recap what happened in both the FCS and the FBS levels with the championships games this week, and then we'll have more fun as the offseason begins, and we'll talk draft picks and all that good stuff, and get into the basketball season and everything else going on. So my thanks to you, Matt, for participation here on Radio MVP, because it's greatly appreciated.
My pleasure. I have a great time.
So for Matt Emsch, I'm Tim Continenza. This has been episode 28 of the Radio MVP Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to download us at radiomvp.com. You can find us on Google Play now and anywhere you use your podcatcher applications. Plus, Matt Emsch is at EMT7178 on Twitter. I'm sorry. EMP. I said EMT. Excuse me. EMP7178. And I am Tim Continenza.
7172.
I know better. I know. Oh my goodness. I screwed that one up.
Everybody. It's at EMP7172 on Twitter. And if you're in the Tri-County or area, Youngstown area, every Tuesday night on 12:40 a.m. WBBW from 6 to 7 p.m. is Just Football with Matt Emsch. Listen on in.
All right, there's that. I can get a hold of Matt. I'm at Tim Continenza anywhere on social media, and you can find me on News Radio 1200. In Newcastle, WKST for high school basketball this season. Got a game scheduled tomorrow night. Not sure it's going to be played because of the weather. So stay tuned for that information over on the internet. All right, for Matt, I'm Tim. Have a great night, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.